Alright, this should do it. Alright, check me out. Let's see if we can find the link and get this working correctly. Not sure why audio disappeared there. Not sure if it was YouTube or my side, but read just about everything, and hopefully we are good to go now. Holy moly. Alright, let's see if we have this working out now. Some live streaming. Let's see if we can find this and get a link. I've got it good to go. Try and go ahead and someone send me a link in the Slack. We'll get that out there and we will go. Sounds good, I'm told. Not sure what went amiss there. And someone just sent the link to the one that is not the correct one. Echoing. Echoing doesn't make any sense whatsoever. How bizarre. Trying to find the correct link and then we will burn through this. I'm not sure what is amiss nor whose fault it is, but same setup that worked correctly several shows in a row. Stand by and we will burn through everything. Hopefully that is the correct link now. Trying to make sure everything is working correctly. I think we are good now. Can hear in YouTube. Good. Let's see if we've got it now correct up here. This is the live link. Okay, we'll have to burn through this even a little faster than we intended. Okay, let's try this again. I believe we have apparently, I didn't really change anything, but okay. Let's get through some shit at fast speed now. We will let people file in, catching up on any news I missed in the last couple minutes. Alright, we will just rocket speed through everything at the moment. Giannis in, Middleton out. Okay, I have a fair amount of appeal for Giannis now. A little bit more on FanDuel than DraftKings. Just responding to that news real quick off the top. Obviously, if this game stays close, which it certainly could, Giannis and Bledsoe at this point carry a little bit of extra upside. Great matchup for Bledsoe. Great matchup for Giannis. Getting Middleton out of there frees up a lot of usage. Going to be difficult to pick exactly who is going to fill in that extra value spot there. And we've got a lot of other safer value. Now, the matchup with the Nets is a good one, but we don't know if it's going to be Bonzi Wells doing redux. Maybe Tim Frazier gets some significant amount of time again, though I doubt it's every minute of the game. Sterling Brown, Pat Connaughton. Not sure exactly where to fill in for Middleton. That's going to be the trickier part of this equation, but I do like Bledsoe and I do like Giannis. Now, if we're going to look at a downside for those couple guys, it'll be the fact that the Bucks kind of sort of don't need this game. They are up 3 on the Raptors with 5 and 6 games respectively to play between the two of them. They should be good to take in the #1 seed, so if you have concern, it's that they are cautious with the minutes on Giannis, obviously, for reason he keeps injuring his right ankle, and or Bledsoe. That being said, probably wouldn't want to play both of them, but not shocked if either one of them hits a pretty serious ceiling game here. We still don't have, or we don't have any Ersan Ilyasova in this game. That makes DJ Wilson a interesting, less owned punt that we can look at in a game that should have a lot of pace. These two teams should run super fast. So I'm just going to talk at light speed about everything that's going on here and get into stuff. So our first game, the only 7 p.m. game of the evening, Detroit visiting Indiana. I like Drummond. He is one of my favorite center plays. The absence of Blake overrules any additional concerns you might have with the pace of the matchup, or at least mitigates them to the extent that I'm interested. It sounds like Langston Galloway is going to play. We don't know about Luke Kennard. That probably enough news to make me on a pretty sexy slate. Limit Reggie Jackson to certainly a tournament play with some upside. The defense will be worse with the absences across the ball with Indiana. But still, not a spot you need to necessarily get anyone from this game. Langston being in, we can't play as much into the narrative that maybe Reggie gets extra minutes because Ish is playing next to him. They still have at least Langston and Wayne Ellington, who's gotten a pile of time and had some upside. Bruce Brown, even if Kennard sits out, Glenn Robinson will pick up a couple minutes. Like, there's just enough going on here that I'm not super interested in this team beyond Drummond, who's absolutely fine to play in anything. On FanDuel, I slightly prefer coming up with a few hundred extra dollars for Karl Anthony Towns. On DK, probably slightly prefer the price on Andre Drummond, but absolutely nothing wrong with him in any format. Managed to have 55 or 60 against Miles Turner a couple times, even with Blake in there. No issue with Andre Drummond. Reggie Jackson, fine to play in tournaments. You're looking at 2 out of the last 4 his minutes got back up to 30 or 32. Frequently, he is seeing closer to 24, 26 in some games. So certainly a lot of risk there. But with Blake out, there is a lot of usage to go around, and that most immediately looks good for Andre. But also, it does bring enough upside for Reggie Jackson to play. I wouldn't have a problem with him in the tournament. Discussing the motivations of these two teams real quickly. The Pistons not locked at all for the playoffs here. They're half game up on the Nets and a game up on the Heat and a game and a half up on the Magic, I think it was, as of this morning. They still need to play. They still need to win. For that reason, a little more confidence in Reggie, and I do feel like Andre will get his full apportioned amount of time. The Pacers, slightly less motivation in that they are going to have a first-round matchup against the Celtics. They have identical records right now. They will almost certainly be the 4 and the 5 because you are looking at about 4 games to move up to the 3 for either of them and about 4 games to fall down to the 6 for either of them. So they are basically playing for the home court advantage game, which is nice. They want it, but not quite as much as teams that are playing to not have their entire postseason disappear into a puff of smoke. That's enough. Let's move on to the next game. We're going to just try to go through these things as quickly as possible and then frequently break for news. Magic and Raptors, I do not have a ton of interest in this game. Again, the Raptors pretty much locked into the 2nd seed. They are going to play basically everyone in this game. I think Anunoby and maybe out or still questionable, Pat McCall, and neither of those really affecting this rotation that much. You've got all the heavy hitters here. Both the centers are there. Pascal Siakam is there. Kawhi Leonard, of course. Kyle Lowry. With all those guys present against what's been a very good Magic defense in a game that doesn't have a ton of pace, you would simply be looking at tournament plays. Kawhi 9,600 on FanDuel at an ugly small forward position, again, is not out of play, but with everybody there in not a great matchup, all the value, other upside guys, Giannis playing now, who you could play at that small forward position, I'm not going to get to a lot of Raptors under almost any circumstances. Magic, only slightly better. They, however, do need to play to win, so we can continue to expect to see their minutes apportioned pretty heavily among the 6 guys who are doing the heavy lifting for that team. Evan Fournier, a little too cheap on FanDuel. I could see getting there again. I would end up other places most of the time. Sort of same thing with Jonathan Isaac, who does have sort of the steal block upside. Aaron Gordon, again, that price has been down 65, 66, 67. Been a big fan of his over the last couple weeks, and he spiked a couple nice ceiling games for us. Price now up to $7K in what's legitimately a bad matchup. Hard to go there. Augustine, more of a cash play. Terrence Ross, 4,900 on FanDuel. Find a roll out there in tournaments. Vooch is going to come behind that price. Drummond for me, Towns for me. But a guy who has shown us 60-plus point games in difficult matchups earlier this year, I don't have a problem running him out there in a tournament, but he would rank for me behind those other high-profile, one might say, centers. Let's go ahead and look at the Nets and the Bucks. It looks like Rodions Kurucs is going to play, meaning basically everyone is there for the Nets. That makes me less excited about Damari Carroll, though 4,400 on FanDuel still works for me as a punt play. The pace should be really nice here, and again, unlike the Bucks, who don't have a lot to win here, they'd like to make sure they get that first seed. They'd like to win this game, but we'll get there in a second. The Nets need to win this game, so no issue if you go with a spend-up spot on D'Angelo Russell. There's obviously lots of incredible value today. That allows us to take a couple high-priced players. I expect D'Angelo Russell to be one of the lesser-owned of those guys who does carry a big upside. Gave you 50, I think 2 out of the last 3. Can certainly happen again here. All the pace in the world. The injuries for the Bucks make the team run, believe it or not, a little bit faster and a little bit worse defensively. So no issue with you playing D'Angelo Russell. I would probably rather play him at his ownership versus Devin Booker, who, again, great matchup. Might play 43 minutes again, might take 30 shots again, might make 65% of them again. I'll take the under based on him. I expect to still be fairly significantly owned at least. Let me go ahead and take a brief glance at that. Yeah, apologies for the lateness. I have no idea what happened. The audio just went out, but I think we are doing well now. So thankfully I tried to start a couple minutes early, so we only ended up being a couple of minutes late. Looking at your Awesemo.com main slate ownership projections updated. Yeah, we have Devin Booker at 29%. I'm not going to tell anyone not to play Devin Booker. He obviously is feeling himself, and they're letting him do all the work on that team right now. We have D'Angelo Russell at about half as much. So especially on FanDuel, but on DK, you are saving a decent bit of money there, and he's going to outscore Devin Booker at least every third game. I would be a little more inclined towards that. Jared Allen, not really a spot I like a lot. Luke Kennard out, cool. Doesn't change much for me. If you were running Wayne Ellington, feel a little happier. If you were running Reggie Jackson, feel a little bit happier. Not going to change a lot there. They have plenty of sort of interchangeable wings there. Still fine with Dinwiddie in a tournament. Probably my second favorite play after Russell, but it's Russell, Dinwiddie, and then you're probably working too hard. Probably Carroll would come in third for me. As far as the Bucks go, I like Eric Bledsoe. He has a massive upside here. Not weird to see. I mean, he picked up a rest game and is perfectly healthy in that last game where everyone played infinite minutes. So I like Bledsoe. Past that, guessing with what they've been doing at their prices, I'd slightly prefer Sterling Brown to Pat Connaughton. And again, I think DJ Wilson, probably with Ersan out, has a bit of an upside again. I'm not shocked if they limit the minutes for Giannis here, but if he sees any sort of full game, he is going to be my highest scoring player on the slate. That's pretty interesting. We'll come back to it in questions if that's not enough. Let's go on to our next 7:30 game, the Knicks and the Bulls. So Walt Lemon Jr., decent chance I've watched more Walt Lemon Jr. basketball than nearly anyone else you'll run into, back to his time with the Red Claws and the Celtics organization and the Pelicans out there next to Trevion Blewett during the Summer League. It is a perfectly productive basketball player in a very strong matchup with the Knicks. Looked great in that last game. I would liken him to Christian Wood 3 games ago, where acquired, comes out, has a big game. No reason not to see if he can do it again. I expect him to continue to take minutes away from Wayne Selden, maybe drop a few off Shaq Harrison. They've come out with the Bulls starting lineup today, which is Lemon Jr., Shaq Harrison, Selden, Luau Cabarrot, so getting Sampson to the bench. Not a ton of interest in Luau Cabarrot, not a ton of interest in Selden. Certainly at the DK price. FanDuel price, I think he's still 4,300. I don't think you're getting the 40 minutes out of him again. This team is going to run a well bit deeper. They played 10 or 11 players in the last game. They're going to run a significant number of dudes out here again. Outside Lemon, you're probably being a little bit too cute. Shout out Robin Lopez, who apparently it is his birthday and there's a revenge narrative going on. It doesn't do a whole lot for me. But, yeah, Lemon is going to be the highest owned player on this slate. FanDuel minimum price and a shooting guard, which is an extra little cookie for you. DK 3,000. Yeah, I think, again, the most likely scenario is they throw 30-plus minutes at him. And with that usage at that price in this matchup, pretty hard to get away from. I think if you played this out over the course of a year, he's a guy who attacks with a fair bit of frequency. I imagine he'd measure out at around a 0.9 fantasy point per minute player in a vacuum against the Knicks. That probably kicks up to near a fantasy point a minute. Yeah, I have him at 32 minutes and about 32 fantasy points. That's a pretty significant issue to get away from. I think we're all good now. Yes, we are all good now. Okay. Let us continue onward. You can certainly Shaq Harrison. Again, price on FanDuel. A little more appealing at 6,200, and again, one of the best steals guys you'll find out there. This against the next team that offers up plenty of turnovers. Not weird to get 45 fantasy points, including 5 steals out of Shaq Harrison here. Slightly prefer playing him to Reggie Jackson at this point, even with just the news that Galloway was in. I had them pretty close at their prices previously. That's a little bit more enough for me to tilt my way. Back there, no interest in Archie Diacono. Has managed to find his way down to 19 minutes a couple times. Again, this looks sort of like the Pelicans and Christian Wood were. Shout out to Walt Lemon, formerly of the Pelicans, where they're, going to see what they have with some of these kids, especially when they're not trying to win games. So even if they somehow convince themselves we're in much worse shape running Lemon out than Archie Diacono, which I'm not sure is the case, they'd probably do it anyway. Looking at the Knicks, this obviously much more spurious environment. It's a brilliant matchup for Mitch Robinson. 6,300 on DK is still too cheap. Starting, again, I was a bigger fan when we were there alone at 5% than when there's be, I presume, 35 or 40% there again today. But that DK price is perfectly workable. And the FanDuel price, even at 8,000, his ability to absolutely kick ass, picking up all those multiple blocks, does not take him out of play. I would probably rather play him on FanDuel for the limited ownership. Giannis not expected to be on a minutes limit today. Obviously, that should increase your degree of confidence in him. I will say minutes limit can mean a lot of things. Not expected to be on a minutes limit means in a close game, if everything else is going okay, they'll still play him as 33 minutes. That doesn't mean if they're not up significantly, which certainly a possibility here, or that they'll just, taper him off a little bit as the game goes. So they're not hard saying he's only going to play 24 minutes. That's great. Should feel more confident playing him. That still doesn't mean that he doesn't randomly play just 30, so I wouldn't, that's assigning sort of a tight binary to it. It's not really a binary situation. We were talking about the Knicks again. The first guy I'd have some appeal for would be Mitch Robinson again. You can Kevin Knox on FanDuel. Went back up to 40 minutes last game. I don't know if that sticks again here. I haven't projected for less than that. After Mitch Robinson, my favorite guy is probably Luke Cornett on DK again at 4,100. Just the matchup's really good, and I will guess they have been leaning on the starters more recently, that he plays 30-something minutes. 30-something minutes in an exceptional matchup with the Bulls at $4,100 is just really cheap. I like Luke. I don't mind Luke next to Mitch. After that, it probably would be Knox for me, because some chance of him picking up 40 minutes, but that is a pretty big step down for me, and I think you can generally do better than Kevin Knox. But FanDuel especially, that is pretty appealing. Thoughts on DJ Wilson projected for 34 minutes? That is more than I would have him projected for. I have him for 27. But the absence of Ersan does kind of remove the minutes floor, which is something you're concerned about when you look at all the other kids there. You have Bledsoe and a couple of them are playing point guard. It's sort of difficult to amortize those minutes a little more. But I would prefer Wilson to Brown. And again, if I'm playing value from that team, I probably go Wilson, Brown, Connaughton if you have the extra money to get there. But certainly some uncertainty when we look at that. Let's talk briefly, and I mean briefly, about the Celtics and the Heat. Again, not particularly thrilling matchup, not unlike the Magic and the Raptors. The Celtics, as alluded to a minute ago, still want to win because they basically are going to be the 4 or 5, but they'd like to be the 4, get that extra home court advantage game versus the Pacers in the first round. The Heat, playing to win everything. They need every minute they can get. This is a tough matchup. If I'm going to play someone from the Heat backcourt at this point, I would probably on FanDuel go with Dwayne Wade. At this point, you could certainly make an argument for Waiters or Dragic. This is a really tough matchup for any of them. The continued absence of Josh Richardson and Derrick Jones Jr. I didn't mention Thon McCurr, by the way. Not the greatest spot. Again, we had that last game where we had McCurr starting, no Ellenson starting, no McCurr starting, Ellenson not playing at all. I imagine McCurr starts again, plays his 30 minutes. Again, they want to win this game. Probably your best min punt sort of salary price guy on FanDuel. Thank you for reminding me that I didn't mention him. But again, there's value in better spots. That last... Blake's been really solid this year. Blake has missed exactly 2 games? Maybe 3 games? But 3,600 on FanDuel, obviously better than 3,800 on DK. Center's not priced as brilliantly on FanDuel. You can play him at power forward on DK. I would prefer Luke Cornett if you can come up with $300. I imagine I would prefer a couple other guys, but certainly not out of play. And again, has blocks and threes upside you don't get out of a ton of players. but still fairly tepid on Paul McCurr, but thank you for reminding me that I didn't discuss him specifically. And again, I'm burning through all this myself. I have notes on all these guys. If there's someone you're wondering about who I don't happen to get through, please prepare a question. Yeah, so Celtics and Heat real quick. James Johnson is going to play. That limits everything a little bit there. You have, Wade last Boston Garden game, I suppose. 6,100 on FanDuel is a little more appealing. I really don't think in a single lineup I have anyone from either of these teams on either site. Fairly rarely. It profiles as a plus spot with the absence of those other two guys playing, ball handler / small forward to see, a decent game out of Dragic or Waiters or Wade, but as opposed to the last couple games where I was heavily on Dragic and that paid off, and then I was a fan of pivoting and Waiters paid off. At this point, the most likely scenario is none of them get there, what are also increased prices now. Dragic 6 and 6.5, Waiters 5.5 and 6, Wade 6.1 and 6.7. Against the Celtics, I'm trying to look somewhere else if possible, but FanDuel probably would play Wade first, DK. All of them priced pretty unappealing with the other options that you have available to you. As far as the Celtics go, you can always play Kyrie. Not a tremendous matchup for him. Not that different from looking at the matchup with the Pacers the other day. Again, they'd like to have this game, but again, they're going to be the 4 or the 5, so they're just playing for home court advantage. It's a little less important. Jaylen Brown not going to play today, I believe, was tweeted at me a moment ago. That's not super relevant when he doesn't play, and who's the only one who doesn't play. Those minutes tend to get pretty well amortized and divided around among other guys. You will get a couple minutes for Marcus Smart. You will get a couple minutes for Gordon Hayward, but nothing that makes any of these guys super appealing for me in a bad matchup. DK prices, even FanDuel 5,300 for Marcus Smart, gets extra for steals, makes it a little more likely he bangs an upside. Sure. Jason Tatum 5,800 on DK. Sure. Al Horford is a forward on DK 6,600. Sure, but again, not super priorities for me. Let's go ahead and keep moving on. Let's talk about the Timberwolves and Portland. Game only 3 or 4 point line. Lillard still has massive upside. We haven't seen the kind of game you can get out of him. This is another stellar matchup for him. Don't mind him as a spend up at all. Again, there's lots of very good value that we like today. The Timberwolves defense really bad recently. I don't hate the pace in this game. If you don't, both sides of this ball, you end up with sort of I like having Towns or Wiggins, and I like having Lillard, and on FanDuel, I still don't mind Enes Kanter again. This not unlike the last game where he went off and had a massive game. That FanDuel price still a little more tolerable, though it's come up $500. Now he's at $6,400. The upside's starting to chip away a little bit. DK, I would rather run Mitch out there. This can go a number of ways, where Kanter gets hot and is the secondary offensive option on a team without a lot of effective offensive options. Puts in a number of buckets against the Timberwolves. Has been just fine in the past. Legitimately, actually, very good in the past against Karl-Anthony Towns. Has had many good games. So 60% that he gets his full minutes, where you're looking at 28, 30. We saw last game where he had 20 and 15 or what have you. And puts up a decent number. He's still going to be too low owned, and that FanDuel price is still fairly appealing for me. Some chance that Towns just goes the hell off and they throw out more Zach Collins. Aminu is going to guard him for a large portion of this game anyway. Price on Aminu gone from being much better on DK to actually now being better on FanDuel, where it hasn't moved at all. DK, it's come up a reasonable amount. No problem with you playing Al-Farouq Aminu. That'd be just tournaments. Same deal with Mo Harkless. Ranked a lot of these guys. Again, the Timberwolves defense is particularly bad, so I'm back on Seth Curry at 4,900 if you wanted. Would probably slightly prefer Terrence Ross, but no issue with running Seth Curry out there. How do I feel about McCurr and Vooch? I am ambivalent on McCurr. More of a FanDuel play for me if you are punting away at center. I'm fine with him on DK, 3,800. No strong take there versus some of the other value. Would probably slightly rather DJ Wilson in that matchup at a similar price. Vooch, I'm fine to play. I have him as price up option below Towns and Drummond, but we will look at ownership in a second, and perhaps the ownership will make that a slightly more advantageous play. For the Timberwolves, again, no one priced that super sexy beyond, no one I'm really that interested in beyond Wiggins, who's extra cheap on FanDuel. Towns, who's even a little bit cheaper on FanDuel. I like both of those players. I like having One, I generally don't like having both. It's been Wiggins a couple games in a row. Maybe that keeps Towns' ownership down. This is a spot where, again, he can get 75 even if he hasn't done it in a few games. Let's go ahead and look at the only 8:30 game. The 76ers visiting Dallas. Luka is doubtful when last I saw. I very much like some exposure to Jalen Brunson, and I very much like some exposure to Trey Burke as the first couple guys I'm looking at. FanDuel, Trey Burke, 3,600 makes for a very nice FanDuel drop punt. It's a matchup I actually like a good amount for him. I think he plays 25, 26 minutes. There isn't a ceiling there. I like Trey Burke. If I'm not playing Trey Burke on FanDuel, I kind of like playing Jalen Brunson. Had a very big game with Luka in there against the 76ers earlier this year. He's the kind of guard who can do some real damage there. You take Luka Doncic off the court, his ability to hit a ceiling re-exposes itself in the mid-fives. I like some exposure to Jalen Brunson, assuming Luka is out, where, again, he's currently doubtful. I like Maxi Kleber in tournaments, 4,900 on FanDuel, especially appealing price. Without Luka, has ended up picking up extra shots, extra minutes, and had some good games himself. I don't mind min-priced FanDuel punt Ryan Brokoff. I would rather go with some of the other guys on DraftKings, but 3,500 on FanDuel. He might break off something on you at that price. Shout out for Dwight Powell, 5,900 on DK. I think you can do as well. Ceiling, again, opened a little bit when you take Luka off the court, floating onto what I think is the last game. No, 2 games ago. Charlotte at Utah. Charlotte's rotation is all the hell over the place. Batum found his way back in last time. Probably get about 20 minutes of him, 20 minutes of Jeremy Lamb. They're running super deep now. Really difficult to like anyone on this team outside of Kemba Walker. And I don't like Kemba Walker. I would rather play most of these high-priced options. I would rather play on DK semi-priced D'Angelo Russell. They are basically out of the playoffs at this point. I have to presume there's no reason to run him out there. Super minutes, the largest line on the entire slate, where Utah is favored significantly. But if I'm playing someone on Charlotte, it's Kemba, and I'm not happy about it. Price way up on Dwayne Bacon, where he came up $900 on DK since the last game. I don't want to pay mid-fives for Miles Bridges. Marvin Williams, doable. I again think Bismack Biyombo plays more minutes than Frank Kaminsky Jr. here. Frank Kaminsky Jr. Let's try that again. Then Willie Hernangomez here. The last game I was pretty sure that was going to be the case, but then Boogie, who put up his 25 fantasy points in 11 minutes before fouling his ass out, when he went out, there was far less disincentive to play Willie, and again, the game was a 47-point blowout. If this game stays close, I can't imagine they try to win it by putting Willie out there for 24-plus minutes against Gobert. But again, I'm not sure what's going to be done with this team, and again, there's safer value all over the place, so don't really want to play Bismack Biyombo, and I think there is a real risk of Hernangomez cramping himself. Really strong matchup for the Jazz. All these guys are in play to a certain extent. The absence of Derek Favors makes $5,000 Jay Crowder pretty nice for me. I like him a decent bit. If this game stays close, he should get himself 30 minutes. That gets pretty appealing at that price. Gobert, 10-5 on FanDuel. Not a ton of interest compared to Vooch or Drummond or Towns. DK, 8,200. Now you're saving yourself a fair bit of money. That's a conversation. I like him quite a bit. Donovan Mitchell, playable again in tournaments. Slightly prefer D'Angelo Russell. And you can run out. I don't think Kyle Korver is out as well, so that probably solidifies some more of the backup minutes for Thabo and Royce O'Neal in the absence of Derek Favors. They should be able to go pretty small in this matchup, so I don't think they need to overload and play 35 minutes of Jay Crowder at the 4. They can make it through with getting 18 minutes of Thabo, or even having Royce play some small ball 4, or Ingles play some small ball 4, but some real concern with that game blowing out Charlotte has looked a little dicey. Moving on to our final game real quick, and then we'll burn through as many questions as we can. Only 6:35, so not doing too badly. Cavs visiting the Suns. This should be pretty funny because neither of these teams want to win. For that reason, I imagine they do sit Kevin Love, who they have as questionable. If you're on a late swap site and Kevin Love is in, there's obviously a very big ceiling there. Only 7,300 presumably you're on DK. No issue with you going to that. I kind of like Tristan Thompson. Played, I'm trying to remember, I'll look it up, mid-20s in minutes in the last game. 26 minutes in the last game. 26 fantasy points. I don't have an issue going there. 4,500, 4,100. pretty sexy matchup. And again, keep in mind DeAndre Ayton is out. Tristan Thompson makes a very interesting pivot or stack alongside piece next to Rashawn Holmes will be much more popular on DK, who raw points I do project more and minutes I project more, but ownership I certainly project a lot more. Don't really want to play 6+ for Jordan Clarkson. Don't really want to play 6+ for Colin Sexton. More of a cash play again for me. Tournament guys probably in order. If we're talking DK, Nance at 6.2. I expect to see north of 30 minutes if Kevin Love sits. Real ceiling for him in a matchup like this one. Not shocked to randomly see 50 out of him. Minutes are always threatened because the Cavs just love screwing with him. But some tournament exposure, slightly safer and similar upside. Kind of like Cedi Osman here. 6,300 FanDuel, sticky position. Going to be a little less popular than Bojan with those other Pacers out. Cedi Osman 5,900 DK, like him a lot. So Nance, Cedi, Tristan probably where I'm looking for here. For the Suns, look, Booker played a game earlier this year with a couple of guys out against the Cavs, had 40 or 45, which is a very decent game. At 11-5 or 10-1, you are taking him over Drummond and Towns and other guys who really seem likely to throw up 50 and have possibility of hitting 60, 65. It is unlikely for a player of Booker's nature to continue to shoot 70% of the field. Maybe they decide to stop giving him 43 minutes a game. Just at his level of popularity and with his price now starting to fix out the upside, like if he gets 50 tonight, that's going to be bad. You're looking to be like, that 50 wasn't quite good enough. Almost certainly. Back-to-backs, the Hornets, the Mavericks, and the Bucks, and no one's on the front end. Somehow no one plays today and tomorrow, so you got that going for you. But the Hornets, yet another reason to have some concern there. The Mavericks and Milwaukee. Josh Jackson, playable if you want to go there. Did get 30 minutes in the last game. Did a lot of watching Devin Booker, but if they bring Booker down at all, which you have to think they don't play him 43 minutes, he's a guy with somewhat of an injury history every game for the rest of the year. Price on Dragon Bender a little higher at 5,000 on FanDuel, 4,300 on DK, just sort of pricing out the upside. Similar to, say, Miles Bridges or just McCall Bridges certainly is a better analogy. Again, priced at 56 and 5,000 flat. Those are guys who, against Cleveland, if you're going to randomly spike an upside, this is the spot to see it in. But outside of Rashawn Holmes, a little more favorable of the guys on Cleveland just because they're all pacing up quite a bit as opposed to Phoenix, which is pacing down a little bit there. Love Rashawn Holmes on DK at 4,500. DeAndre Ayton missed exactly 6 games this year in a chunk, otherwise played every game of the year. I think Holmes missed also 4 of those games. We only got one decent matchup for Holmes in those other 2 where he started against the Lakers and had 40 some odd, I think. I like him in this spot quite a bit. I have him for 30 minutes and about 37 fantasy points. So Rashawn Holmes, very, very good for me on DK, my second favorite piece of value after Walt Lemon Jr. Not out of play on FanDuel at 6,500. I didn't mention Tyreek Evans for some reason. I just sort of skipped over on the Pacers there. Yeah, Tyreek Evans, the best play from this game. Will go under-owned probably relative to where he should be. I have him for nearly 30 minutes, and again, has been bad this year, but it is simply an issue of not having the basketball in his hands. You put the ball in his hands, he is a guy who can do some real damage. So our newest ownership, Rashawn Holmes, 49%. That's about where I'd end up on DraftKings. Probably go for a little bit more. Walt Lemon, 47%. Yeah, I'd go for more than that. When he was in the 60s, 70s, we had him projected earlier today. That would have been an interesting question for me. But he's just minimum price. There is a ton of value, and no issue with getting away from any of these 50% guys. But I project them both for north of 30 minutes. Both of them, I think it's fairly likely. I put them both around 80% to get there. He'd have to get in foul trouble, or Chicago would have to decide to look at other guys they've seen a lot more. Chicago's got a deep rotation, so yeah, maybe Walt doesn't get there. Rashawn Holmes, they have Bender who can play the position. Can be a guy who gets in foul trouble, but especially with Love out of there, your concern is a little less. Next, we have 41% Mitch. I would come in under that number at this point. There are other centers priced in that area that I like nearly as much. I love Mitch at 6,300. He's the 3rd highest owned play on the slate. There are a lot of good centers you can pay up for: Towns, Drummond, Gobert, Vooch. There's just a number of places to double pay up. If two of those pay-up centers get 60 each, then even if you get 40 out of Mitch, would end up maybe not being in your ideal construction. There is also still just a lingering foul trouble issue with Mitch that hasn't reared its ugly head as often. Although, for what it's worth, I think this is only the second game they played against the Bulls this year. Mitch was pretty shitty in the first game against the Bulls this year. He started and hit massive foul trouble against Wendell Carter Jr., of all people, in 10 minutes. He's gotten much better at that. Any sort of raw points question. Even cash, I think Mitch is just fine. I ranked him double A's. Feel free to run that. But 41%, not as absurdly cheap as these other guys. Probably looking to play somewhere else a little bit. I would have like a quarter. I want to have some. The full fade bothers me. I like him more on FanDuel, where I expect to get him at better ownership. And because of how many blocks he gets and the fact that all centers are more expensive on FanDuel anyway, 8,000 on FanDuel is just about as good as 6,300 on DK, but due to the sort of hidden nature of those inherent numbers, the ownership will end up being far less. So we'll be a little more excited on FanDuel. Fourth, we have Tyreek Evans at 3,600. Yeah, I like that a lot. Getting Collison out of there, who again hasn't missed a lot of games. When you have no Collison, no Depot, that works. Going back to that a little bit, DK, where the price is a little better. Miles Turner, fine. Upside is added as possibility. Sabonis, FanDuel, where the price is relatively better, and a power forward. Fine to roll those guys out there in tournaments. Not a huge fan, but would have 5 to 10% of those guys where they're very low owned. Devin Booker, 30%. I'd come in a little under that, but that ownership is not terribly crazy. The matchup is an incredibly strong one for him. The DraftKings price is much more reasonable than the FanDuel price, especially relative to some of the other options you can look at. So I'm fine going back there. I'd have a little less than 30%, just because even in the best environments, I expect the minutes and the shots and the efficiency to come down at some point. Giannis, 28%. Yeah, getting Middleton out of there, that's a little bonus, especially with them saying we don't expect him to have a minutes limit. I think I might end up a little bit over that. Luke Cornett, 4,100, 27%. I like Ben Simmons, 27%. I like Karl-Anthony Towns, 19%. I like Lillard, 19%. I like Drummond, 18%. I like Gobert, 17%. I like Harris, 16%. Obviously, Harris on FanDuel, better of the options. Starting your lineups, if you play roughly evenly on a lot of sites, which I know 10-20% of our people do, certainly starting with Harris on FanDuel and Simmons on DK is not the worst way to go, where they're priced a little more advantageously, respectively. Josh Jackson, 15%, probably coming under that. Doesn't look 100% to me, but the matchup is just fine. Prefer again on FanDuel, or dollar per dollar, same amount, which makes him quite a bit better. D-Russ, 14%. I'd come in a little bit over that. Sterling Brown, Corey Joseph. Corey Joseph probably in a tough matchup. I think does defer to Tyreek a little bit more, 14% more than I would have there. Nance, 12. I'd want to get on top of that. There's McCurr coming in at 12. Kyrie, 11 is about right. Trey Burke at 11. I'd come in over that a little bit. Powell, 10. All right, so going to catch up with some news and then start buttering through a fair queue of questions that are building up here. Dennis Smith Jr. out. Not doing a ton for me. Makes Moutier in a good matchup a little more exciting. Tightens up the rotation a little bit. Makes Dotson a little more exciting. Again, there's just value that costs $2,000 less than those guys. I project pretty similarly. But certainly no issue. Or more excited to play Dotson or Knox or Moutier at this juncture. Tweet me any questions you might have in the event you are in the YouTube chat, because due to the various other technical issues we're having, pretty difficult for me to see your questions. DK, GPP, Terrence Ross, or Reggie at guard? I would play Reggie. It's risky, but the ownership, being in that 10% range, real chance he gets 30 whatever minutes. Again, they need this game. And in the absence of Blake, you're looking at potential, usage upside. If he gets 30 minutes, getting 45 out of Reggie wouldn't shock me, so I'd be more inclined to go there. Bonzi is a punt. Yeah, I don't really have any interest in Bonzi. Again, with all those other guys back, I guess if he's minimum or within a couple $100 minimum, I don't recall Bonzi Wells' price. I sort of punted on researching. I rewatched the entirety of the Hawks-Bucks game and just got even more confused. Lemon, Burke, Holmes, Evans, Jermaine, Fillers. Yes, I'm a fan of that. Missed out on Jonah Bolden talk. Quick thoughts? Yeah, I didn't even mention Jonah Bolden, thanks. He was going to start at center again. Last game I said I'd run Boban and DK Bolden on FanDuel because he was a min-price power forward. I honestly don't remember what his price came up to. So let me reference that before I speak out of school here. I have notes on him, but I did them before I had the prices. Now 4,500 on both sites. Obviously, that's a better deal on FanDuel. DK, I'm just going to play Rashawn Holmes in what's a better matchup by a little bit. And look, the upside is there. The ownership is not so execrable. I think he is a fine tournament play. But again, this last game, you had Bolden go off and make 5 3-pointers and do sorts of things that he just really normally isn't in his game. Now, having both Butler and Embiid out clearly opens up some space for him. Can play at the 4 and the 5. Makes me a little more confident in his minutes, but I still have him projected at 22. Could get 30. Could score 40 fantasy points again. Certainly a spot he could do it in. But we've also seen plenty of games where, you know, Amir gets time and Mike Scott gets time and Boban gets time. So some real danger there. So I'm fine with it as a tournament play. It's sort of like, I don't know, Gallinari yesterday turned out really well, where I went, look, there's a lot of risk here. But at that ownership point, there's real upside to be achieved, even at that price. Sort of the same situation here. You could get a very nice game out of Jonah Bolden here. When we started to miss Embiid games earlier this year, I said, look, they're going to start Bolden, I think, and they want him to succeed. They want to develop him as a player. They want to see more out of him. And when he's playing well, they are going to let him run out the spoon there. And as we're pointing out that the 76ers, talking about everybody's motivation, are almost certainly going to be the 3 seed. They are, I think, 3 or 4 games behind the Raptors and 3 or 4 games ahead of that Celtics-Pacers duopoly in the 4-5 position. So, yeah, I like Jonah Bolden quite a bit. Do I like Joe Harris? No, I think Joe Harris is fine to play. He's, you know, not a guy who frequently hits a massive ceiling, but the pace in that matchup is fine. I would generally rather play Damari Carroll and play $500 or $600. Probably get your 28 minutes out of Joe Harris. Could you get there? Sure, but would probably rather go at some of the Bucks value, obviously Tyreek, etc. Rondé Hollis Jefferson or Dirk in a DK GPP. That's tough. The Mavs played yesterday and Dirk got a lot of minutes again. I'm not shocked if I don't want to play either of those players. Give me DJ Wilson, give me Walt Lemon, give me Tyreek, give me someone over either of those guys. If you have to play one of those 2 guys, I would play Rondé with very little confidence. I'm not surprised if one or both of those players does not play. Neither of those things that would surprise me. And his starting minutes projection ideas, I have him at 25 minutes and 19 fantasy points. He's fine in the world of Tyreek. I think it's just kind of a frank mistake. I have him for fewer minutes and much less production than Tyreek Evans. I like Tyreek Evans as a basketball player. It's a matchup I think is very good. I expect him to have the ball in his hands a lot, and he's just going to destroy that price. So if you already have Lemon and Reek, I guess James Ennis makes some degree of sense, but over either of those other 2 guys, yeah, not really working out for me as a play there. Lillard or Simmons, FanDuel GPP. Yeah, I'm fine with both of those. Let me take a look at what we have their ownerships projected. In a vacuum, I like both those players quite a bit, but it's gonna, you know, my answer will have something to do with the ownership. We currently have Ben Simmons at 19% and Damian Lillard at 19%. Okay. I will slightly prefer Lillard in that. But I mean, by a hair. I have no issue with either of those plays. Would have something more to do with, you know, game correlation at that point. Certainly Simmons, if I don't have Tobias Harris on FanDuel, I think that would change things a little bit for me. Scrolling up and catching some questions I missed. Tyreek at 45% might pivot to Kadeem Allen at 2%. I have no issue with that. Again, getting DSJ out of there, you probably get 25 minutes of Kadeem Allen. That could certainly happen. Thoughts on Nwaba with no love? Again, those other options I think are strictly better on paper, but this is a Phoenix team that hands over the ball a lot, and Nwaba can pick up a decent number of turnovers. Would rather get there on FanDuel than DraftKings, but not out of play. That's you know, a GPP winner type play. Brunson or Moutier in a GPP, I'm going to stick with Jalen Brunson there. But again, Moutier, you have to think, gets significant time here. I have them both projected for almost identical minutes at this point. You save a little money on Brunson. Expect to be a little bit less owned. Good question. I unfortunately found my way to DJ Wilson at 3,500 on FanDuel. Yeah, DJ Wilson would be my favorite minimum priced FanDuel punt. Luka out, unsurprised. So yeah, again, Brunson, Burke, both guys I like quite a bit. Nance and Cornette or Homie and Josh Jackson FanDuel GPP. Give me Nance and Cornette right now. Fairly close though. Do I think it is a double pay-up center day on DK? I like that construction. It's not quite as obvious. There's been days in the past where I was pretty sure this is a 4-point guard day, or this is a 2-center day. I don't know that it's necessarily not stacking up on the value a little bit and hammering in guys like Giannis, etc. I don't know if it's I like those center pay-up spots. I like Towns. I like Drummond. I like Gobert. But it's not, I don't feel quite as strongly. I certainly think that build is fine. If you end up with 2 expensive centers in your lineup, I'm not going to have any issue with it whatsoever, but it's not quite as obvious as a play as when I say, looking at that team. Philly take, yeah. Beyond anything I missed, I didn't specifically mention J.J. Redick, a little more appealing on FanDuel. Again, small forward. Is a thing. Those other guys out there can certainly do a good bit more. Fine with Bolden. Again, would prefer on FanDuel. Fine with Simmons anywhere. Fine with Tobias Harris anywhere. Obviously prefer Simmons a little bit on DK. Tobias Harris on FanDuel. Favorite 8K or below FanDuel GPP point guard. Probably going to be Eric Bledsoe, even with Giannis in. Not shocked to see 45, 50 spot out of him. Last time these two teams played had 39, I want to say, with Giannis in there next to him. And Middleton in there next to him, so I have a feeling my answer to that is going to be Bledsoe. Yes, my answer to that is clearly Bledsoe, especially considering he's the only point guard on FanDuel between 6,900 and 9,200, so yes, pretty easily that there. Let's look at some other things, pulling in some questions, continuing to check news and tweets. I'm trying to think what is still pending. As far as things we don't know, we got the Bucks news, which was obviously important. We largely know what's going on here. Salary not an issue. Lillard or Simmons on FanDuel. I'm gonna take Lillard again by a hair, unless you. I guess I would try to play Tobias Harris and Lillard. If I don't have Tobias Harris at that point, I'm probably gonna play Simmons over Lillard. But I have them almost identically ranked, so it's gonna have more to do with making sure I have a piece of a Philly game that I want. So that's really close for me. I do not have a strong take on that question, and I try not to invent one when I don't have to. Burke or Kadeem Allen or Moutier. Setting aside price, I'll take Moutier there. I slightly prefer Burke still on FanDuel, but Moutier is my projected high score of those three by a pretty significant margin at this juncture. Looking around. More questions coming in. Booker or Dame on DK? I would play Lillard for the ownership. But again, I'm just away from paying 10K on super expensive guys. Quick thoughts on Courtney Lee starting. Courtney Lee is starting? Somehow I missed a news blurb that's not on any of my alerts. Let me back up and check some things. Doncic out. Heat will start. I mean, I'm not going to want to play Courtney Lee pretty much regardless. So, yeah, I'm still Jalen Brunson or Trey Burke there pretty significantly. Thinking of playing Tatum and Horford together on FanDuel, what do you think? I don't want 2 Celtics in that matchup. Less annoying in cash, but I don't want 2 Celtics in that matchup. Giant slate. He started yesterday for Luka. Yeah, no, I knew that. I didn't expect that to be the case today. But I'm obviously dubious on Courtney Lee. Courtney Lee just not a real fantasy producer. Solid guy, nice 6-man to have on your team, fill in some minutes. can be certainly reasonably handy. But I believe he played like 20 minutes yesterday. I'll look it up. I want to make sure I'm not missing something here. I occasionally make a mistake. Played 17 minutes. Yeah, no. No. Trey Burke played 31 off the bench and is a vastly better fantasy basketball player. And just I want 0 Courtney Lee. Had 9 points and a rebound in his 17. Yeah, none of that for me. I'd rather Ryan Brokoff, who would be numbered 18 on my value rankings, before I played Courtney Lee. Getting back into it, Powell and Harris. I'm going to assume that's Tobias. We have a Joe in our world today. Or Robinson and Wiggins, DKGPP. Yes, that is Tobias. If you don't have Towns, Robinson and Wiggins, if you had Towns, that would be enough to push me on Dwight and Tobias. Someone asked in chat, who's out today? That's a long question. Still looking up things. Want to make sure we're not forgetting or missing anything. Thoughts on Tobias DK? I think he's great. Taking those other guys out of there, certainly not a matchup I'm overly concerned with. Dallas, everybody can easily get theirs. And I expect him to, do second fiddle on the lifting, so I'm surprised if 2 out of the 3 of him, Redick, and Simmons aren't good. I think you want to make sure you have some exposure to the 76ers team in some way, shape, or form. Again, they don't have the most in the world to play for, which would be, the one thing that would give me some concern if I had any, but I'd like Tobias Harris a lot on DK. Chalk most likely to fail. Yeah, that's always a good question. Again, looking at the DK chalk there. Probably Cornette or Mitch Robinson. Foul trouble on Mitch. Cornette just getting yanked for being ineffective. Probably one of those two Knicks. The chalk most likely to fail. Yahoo Cash, Burke, and your little thing disappeared on me here. On DK, would you pivot off Mitch Robinson with Brooke Lopez at the same price and a better matchup with a ton less ownership? Yeah, I think that's a very good tournament pivot. I'm absolutely fine with you doing not dar. Coming down to it, I think, looking for news. Again, pile of early games. Want to make sure we don't miss anything. Yeah, we are coming down to it. Not seeing a ton of overlay in any of those contests. Thanks for asking, though. It tends to be a good thing to keep an eye on. We are coming down to it. Nearly there, friends. Alright. And now, all we have left is to wait for the 7:01 news. Again, not seeing anything since Doncic being out, which was pretty well expected, so not as crazy of a show as we expected. Let's get some Tyreek ownership. I think is going to be the first big one. Drummond will be pretty well owned. Interesting to see what Jackson comes in at. So let us find some ownership on DraftKings. $300,000 tournament on DraftKings today is nice. Yeah, again, sorry for the beginning of the show there. I think we still got through everything in a fair amount of time and reacted to all the news as necessary. Might be something with the simulcasting on YouTube. Don't know, but we'll continue to look into it. I imagine you're going to have them as the highest 2-1 players. I imagine you'll have Reek followed by Drummond, followed by, I don't know, third will be interesting. Downloading now. Number 1, Reek. Number 2, Drummond. Yeah, about as expected. So number 1, Tyreek Evans, 34.5%. Probably go a little higher than that. I'm a bit more of a Tyreek believer than most. Just didn't get involved in the offense a lot this year, but not really an option they have here. The matchup is bad. I don't care. He's cheap enough. On DK, I did have him behind Lemon and behind Holmes as value plays, but still a pretty big fan. Building one lineup, I probably start with those 3 guys and sprinkle in some studs. Number 2, Andre Drummond, 24%. Like that a lot for Andre. 9,700, obviously, his price has come up from the preposterous numbers it was at for a while there, but still feels fairly safe of giving you 45 plus and 60 plus. Not shocking for me. 10% Kojo. I'm fine with it. Kojo just not getting to the upside. I would much rather have Reggie Jackson at 8.86%. That feels pretty good for me. Thon McCurr, 6%. Fine with that. Again, that last start, not totally indicative of the upside he can hit. He can do more threes and blocks and things that are exciting. 5% Bojan. I would want a lot of that. He has just been good and is playing alpha dog in the offense on this team. And you take Collison out there, he's going to do his thing a lot. The wings on Detroit can be defensively certainly a little bit porous. So I'd want a piece of that. 3% Miles Turner. Yeah, I'm fine with that. 2.5% Thad Young. Disappointing last game when I liked him a fair bit. Price even came up a little bit in a more difficult matchup, but 2.5%. Fine with me. Aaron Holiday, 2.23%. Probably a little bit too cute. Probably gets 20 minutes here, but not quite enough for me. Wayne Ellington, 1.8. Sure. Sabonis, 1.8. Sure. All the way down to Ish, 0.23. Bruce Brown, 0.20. Darren Collison, 0.16. Congratulations. You played yourself. 0.11. Doug McDermott, you may have heard. Never the answer. So yeah. There we are, my friends. Hopefully, if you are playing the baseball and the basketball, you do extremely well today. Hopefully, you pivoted well away from some of the chonky options here. It'll be interesting. I will be paying close attention to see what happens with the Bucks here. Obviously, a team that runs at a decent pace with some super high-scoring players, and we'll want to have some idea what's going on. So I'll be really interested to see how the minutes amortize around those other guys as this slate goes forward. So if you have any further questions, go ahead and tweet me at FastEddieFear. Congratulations to a couple very decent winners we had last night. I would like to say it's because you're a great fantasy player. It's not. It's because you were incredibly lucky. Winning a tournament any day is because you're incredibly lucky. You put yourself in a better position to win over time if you play well. If you build good lineups, pick guys with upside, react well to ownership, keep abreast of news, you have a 1 in 1,000 chance of winning a tournament as opposed to a 1 in 5,000 chance if you're just throwing shit at the wall. Had an interesting conversation with someone who had a big day yesterday and was like, I am the man. I'm like, I don't know. Winning on any one day really doesn't make anyone the man. And winning on yesterday means it's sort of like being like, I won a chess tournament where someone lobbed a hand grenade in the window and killed 85% of the participants. Like, still a good job. Took some skill to get there. But yesterday was filled with shrapnel, to continue forward with my analogy. So there it is. Fun for me as always. Hopefully for you as well. I'll be back again tomorrow. God bless and bon chance.